This lesson will be about success rate, which is another alternative measure of success or utility in football, and is probably the most basic stat we have in football analytics. It's very simple. The way it works is if we have a set of plays or a subset of plays, all runs or passes or plays on a certain series, whatever, we assign a 1 if that play was successful, and we give it a 0 if it was not successful. And we can continue to do that for any set of plays. And let's say we've got 10 plays in this case, and all we need to do is add up the number of plays considered successful and divide it by the number of plays, and there you go. We've got a 40% success rate on this drive, let's say. So you might be wondering why use something so simple when we already have things like an expected point model or even the win probability model, something we'll talk about in a future lesson. Well, first of all, we didn't always have expected points and win probability. Second of all, success rate is a measure of consistency. So let's say you have a possession, ball control type offense, you want to have a very high success rate. If you want to be moving the chains, if you want to stay ahead of schedule, as they say, success rate is that metric for that. So it's very simple, it's very basic, but it's also very useful. One additional benefit is that success rate eliminates the magnitude of a play and just tells you the yes or no of whether or not the play was successful. So it separates the magnitude from that yes or no question, which can be very useful, as we'll see when we talk about game theory in future lessons. So how does success rate work? The question is, how do we know whether or not a play is successful or not? Well, back in 1988, there was a book called Hidden Game of Football, which introduced a lot of the concepts we still use today in football analytics. One of those concepts was success rate. And if you can find a used copy of Hidden Game of Football, I strongly recommend it. It's well worth the effort. So here's how the rule of thumb works for Hidden Game of Football success rate. On first down, you need a gain of at least 4 yards. On second down, you need at least half of the yards remaining. And on third down, you need to convert. And if you do that, then it's a success. If not, it's not a success. Fourth down's a little more complicated. If you're going for it, you need to convert. But for example, if you're kicking a field goal, you'd want to make the field goal to be a success. But we're primarily concerned with the common scrimmage plays on first through third down, runs and passes. So that's what we're going to focus on. So here's the basic rule of thumb, and it works very well. However, back, I guess it was 2009, when I was making the win probability and expected point models, I decided, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and build a success rate model as well. This should be pretty easy. I mean, win probability and expected points are far more complicated and more difficult to create those models, so this should be real easy. And, I had a bunch of plays to look at, and started going through and writing programming the code, the instructions to be able to figure out whether or not a play was successful based on down and its gain. It was complicated because of penalties and whether or not the play was a touchdown or whether there was a challenge, and it got complicated. But I already had expected points for each play. So let's say we had a list of 3 plays, and each play had a certain expected point value. So the first play had a gain of expected 1.5 expected points. The next play, let's say it lost 0.3 expected points. The next play gained 0.2, and so on. Well, I could just look at the expected point value here, and if it's positive, then I know the play was successful. If it's negative, I know the play was unsuccessful. Positive, successful, and so on. And that's all I needed to do. I just need to look at the expected points added for a play. If it's positive, then it's successful. If not, then it's unsuccessful. So that's what I like to use. It's simpler and it's more accurate. So after all, this rule of thumb was just a crude approximation of whether or not expected points was positive or not. So now that we do have that model, might as well go ahead and use it. Additionally, this is more accurate because it takes into account where on the field the ball is. So if you're approaching field goal range or if you're approaching either one of the end zones, it's going to take that into account into whether or not it's successful. Additionally, it turns out that it's really not 4 yards on first down. It should be 5 or more yards. Would be far more accurate, especially for today's game of football. So that is success rate. Still a useful measure for the different reasons I mentioned. It's a measure of consistency. It's also a window into how offenses actually operate, and we'll see that more when we delve into game theory. So that's success rate. That's where it came from. That's how you calculate it, and that's what it's used for. There are still some websites or services that will still use the hidden game of football success rate. I don't know, in the future we might want to differentiate what we're using. We might want to call that AFA success rate and this hidden game of football success rate. But either one will be pretty close and it'll do the job.